Welcome to the Pat White Show.
His name was Cole Allen. He's 31 years of age, graduate of Caltech with a degree in mechanical engineering. And then he went on and got his master's degree in computer technology. Now that means he's a pretty smart guy, right? Very smart. Engineering degree, master's degree in computers. 31 years of age, lives at his parents' home, or at least did live in his parents' home. And yet one day he decided that he was going to jump on a train. Not a plane, not a bus. Jumped on a train that went all the way from Torrance, California to Washington, D.C. Checked in at a Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. on a Friday. That's the numbers that we're seeing thus far. And then he wrote a, last will and testament, if you will, or at least thinking it was last will and testament. It was more of a dogma. I happen to have a copy of it right here, what he wrote. It's over 1,000 words. And what he said was, kind of interesting, because here's a gentleman from a family, and his dogma, if you will, thanks his family, thanks his church. And he said, what my representatives do reflect on me, and I'm no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. Now, here's a question I have. Where did he get that information? Where did he become filled with information that the so-called individual that he was going after was a pedophile, a rapist, a traitor? And all of those things, where did he learn that? From his family? Well, according to his family, they were concerned what was going on. They even contacted authorities a number of times saying there's a problem with him. Something's going on. And when the terrible shooting happened at the correspondence dinner that we all know about, first people that were contacted the media was one of his relatives up in the East Coast saying, I know who did this. It's my brother. This is what we learned. This is what we're finding out. Why did Cole Allen turn into, a vengeful monster? And where did his head get filled with the fact, a traitor? A traitor to what? Pedophile? Really? A rapist? Criminal? All those things do not come from nowhere. Did he get it on the dark web? I don't believe so. Because, I, like anybody else, could probably be filled with those same type of thoughts if I believed everything I saw every day in the media. That's right, the mainstream media is now spouting and has spouted this stuff for as long as I can remember. When I was a kid growing up, you didn't hear that on TV. I lived in the era of Walter Cronkite, Huntley Brinkley, and that particular genre of newsman. And frankly, that wasn't the methodology that was done. You went to someone's house, you didn't talk about things like that. You didn't discuss things like that. It just was something you didn't do. Heck, when I grew up, I was a Kennedy Democrat, believe it or not. Yes, I was. Till he was assassinated, and the Warren Commission hid the entire report and said it was one guy, and he was in a tower in Dallas. I've been there. I went, how can a guy get that kind of shot off? Because I'm a marksman myself. At least that's the hobby that I have. And I'm always kind of wondering these things. And now I'm finding out that, what I was told by the government was not real, was not honest, was not correct. And what I'm finding out more and more each and every day, that sometimes you can't trust what's happening in the government. But worst of all, I can't trust what's happening, what I see every day on the media. And that's bothersome, folks. If it doesn't bother you, it should. But for one gentleman who's highly educated, smart, got a family, he's not a bozo. He's not living in a cage somewhere. This guy's highly educated, smart. So where does his brain become infested with this stuff? Like I said, in my opinion, it's the mainstream media, because that's where I hear it. Oh, and the celebrities in California. So when you watch TV, this celebrity said this celebrity said that. Where am I taking my cues from celebrities? What do they know? Most of them haven't even graduated from high school. You take a look at their resumes. They're just actors. That's what they do. And since when is their opinion worthy of being on network television? I may be spouting off But reading what Mr. Cole Allen wrote, he said, if I make it through this, which I probably won't unless the Secret Service is really stupid, well, Mr. Allen, yes, you did barge into the hotel. And I think a lot of folks need to understand something about the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. They are the only facility in the entire city of Washington, D.C. that has a ballroom capable of holding 2,500 people. And even then, those 2,500 people were jammed in like rats in a cage. I'm surprised the fire marshal allowed that in that facility, but that's the biggest room that exists in D.C. You see, we don't have a big giant ballroom set up someplace. Yes, I know Trump wants to build one. They're trying to put one together to be safe and secure, and I get that. But in D.C., that's the only place available, but it happens to be at a hotel. A hotel where regular people like you and me can go to that hotel, register, go in. They're saying, well, how come there weren't people there checking for guns when guests come in? They're guests. That's exactly what they are. They do have certain freedoms in this country. If I want to check into Hilton Hotel, I don't want someone coming up and saying, I need to know and inspect your luggage, inspect what you're carrying into the hotel because you got a meeting somewhere. To find out, I want you to go through a metal detector and x-ray all your stuff. You do that at every hotel? Is that what you're asking for? No, it's a hotel. Secret Service have enough time trying to put up a perimeter in the basement area. This guy had a plan, and he researched it pretty well, but he traveled across country to do it. What would go into the mind of a person to make him want to do that? Where does he learn the hate? Where does he learn the disrespect? Where does he learn the disgust? Did he learn that on his campus? Possibly. You send your kids to college nowadays, you send them and one day they're going to come back the other, they're going to be speaking Marxism. Oh, that works really well. Socialism. Go to New York City if you want that. You're going to get it. Problem with that is socialism ain't going to work when they run out of other people's money. And they will, and they are. The problem I see is looking at Mr. Allen's dogma is that he was poisoned somewhere, and his family knew it. Because we allow one particular medium what is called the freedom of speech and the freedom to say whatever you want to say. Well, apparently, sometimes it doesn't work. You're creating two factions in this country, one versus the other. And if you get those two factions riled up too much, you're going to have more trouble when people are thinking, I now have to go and assassinate someone for their particular beliefs. When we start getting into that level, folks, and boy, Mr. Cole Allen certainly makes it feel like we're getting there, we're going down a wrong path. And that path may very well lead to something that no one wants to see, but America once experienced in the 1860s. And you don't want that again. At least I hope not. And now you know. Well, every year, every department of government has to come in front of the Congress with their budget proposal for next year. It's called the fiscal budget. Everybody goes in front and pleads their case. Here's what I want, here's what I need, and hopefully they get it. There's no guarantee it'll happen, but one department seems to have a whole lot of clout, and that is the Department of War. It used to be called the Department of Defense. Previously, in last year's budget, the Department of Defense said, I want $225 million for drones. That was the amount of money that was appropriated for drone technology in the U.S. military and the U.S. government. This year, for 2027, that amount has been increased to, are you ready? $55 billion. You heard me right. Drone technology has gone from $225 million to $55 billion. Why? Because drone technology is becoming the world as which we live. All you got to do is take a look at the Ukraine-Russia war that's been going on for, 2-3 years? And all they're doing is slinging drones back and forth at each other. And they've been very effective in what they do. And the technology behind the drones is becoming even more and more effective, and it's becoming the popular item used. Now, keep in mind, back in the Revolutionary War days, people used muskets. You loaded it up with one ball, did all the machinations, fired one shot. It may take you a couple of minutes to load the gun up again. That's how it was. Today, we work with drones, AI-controlled drones, electronic drones. We work with people sitting there with these little headsets on, watching the drones, going in and hitting exactly what they're aiming for. But the defense budget, it appears for next year, 2027, the Department of Defense is going to ask for, are you ready? $1.5 trillion for their budget. Now, when you take a look at what the budget of the entire income that comes into the United States, well, that's a pretty big chunk. It's gone up 40% from the previous year. You're asking yourself, what? 40%? Why? Simple. You know that Iron Dome that exists over Israel right now, where we use the Patriot missiles to shoot down all those missiles that come in from Iran? You've seen it on TV. We all have. Now, the president wants to have a golden dome over the United States, protecting it from missiles coming in from other countries. And believe me, it isn't just Russia we're worried about. It's other countries, including, I should point out, Iran. Now, granted, they may not be around that much longer, but I got to tell you, we found out they've got some missiles that can go pretty far. We thought originally the best they could do is 1,400 miles, except when they launched 2 missiles at Diego Garcia, and that's over 2,000 miles away. Well, now we know they've got a lot more firepower than we thought. And if they stay around, which we hope they don't, well, they can launch a missile right now into London if they want to, take out whomever they want. They're going to go out big if they have to. But imagine if they wanted to launch a missile at the United States East Coast. Atomic weapon, nuclear weapon could kill maybe 20, 30, 40 million Americans. That's what it could do on the East Coast. So would a Golden Dome stop that from happening? The answer to that question is yes. It works in Israel. It would work here. Are we going to allow the government to approve a multi-million dollar, a $1.7 trillion budget for the Defense Department? Chances are it'll probably pass. But right now we realize $225 million for drone technology this past year ain't going to cut it anymore. Now we're going for $55 billion and utilizing a department in the Pentagon called the Defense Autonomous Warfare Group. And that's what they do. They figure out using drones and how you can use them effectively. More stuff happening in the air? Yes, it's different than yesterday, but everything changes because nothing stays the same. You got to be ahead of the power curve, or else you're going to be last on the totem pole. Something for you to figure out and something for you to understand. And now you know. Well, I would like to introduce you to an influencer. This influencer has 3 million followers across the United States, across the internet, or wherever you want to go. Wherever he goes, more and more people show up because he's their, savior, for lack of a better term. Mr. Piker, 31 years of age, he is going around and telling people to, ready? Assassinate the president. That's one of his machinations that he's done. Well, Hasan Piker, you said, well, that's probably somebody on the fringe, somebody nobody knows, somebody who's kind of strange out there that nobody thinks about, nobody cares about, or nobody's interested in. Well, you might be surprised. Because the New York Times, that's right, the venerable New York Times, the gray lady, held a public seminar, if you will, and it featured the New York Times culture columnist by the name of Nadja Spielman, I may pronounce that wrong, and Gia Tolentino, a writer for the New York, and Mr. Piker. And there he was with these folks in a New York Times sponsored event, spouting that it's time for war to happen, that blood should be in the street of capitalists. That's right, anybody who's involved in capitalists, they should be killed. And this is what he is spouting, and this is what he has 3 million people following. Now this, folks, is a trend that's going on in America. More and more people are becoming asphyxiated to this kind of concept. Gee whiz, if we don't like who it is, we should kill them. Is that the impetus behind Mr. Cole Allen? Remember the 31-year-old man from Torrance, California, came across the country on a train, not a plane, not a bus. Came across the country on a train because he knew he could store his firearms that he had with him, guns, knives, or whatever else he was carrying, And because he knew he couldn't do that in an airplane, so, well, let's take a train. So what do we need? TSA people at every train station in America? Is that what we want? I don't think so. Checks into a hotel in Washington, D.C., where thousands of people go to a regular hotel. Only because the event being held in the basement of the hotel, which contains a ballroom, the largest of which in the entire Washington, D.C. area. The only place available to hold an event like that. Well, unless you count the White House and the administration wanting to build their own ballroom. But besides that, there you are, Mr. Hasan Piker. He's the guy who's saying the blood of capitalists needs to be flowing in the streets and advocating the assassination of the president. Now that's where America's going, folks. That's where we're turning into a divided nation, and the division is becoming bigger and bigger every single day. And when you have people out like this preaching this kind of rhetoric, apparently there are going to be people who believe it, and people who may pick up a weapon, what have you, because they think it's something they have to do. The days of the John Hinckleys are gone. Now it's based on political philosophy. And if their philosophy doesn't agree with your philosophy, they have the right to kill you. And if that's how you want to die, well, that may not be the best choice you could ever make. But this is where things are going, folks. And Hasan Piker is one of the people leading that charge. And how do we know that he didn't have an influence on Mr. Cole Allen when he went into the Hilton Hotel and burst into the hallway and ran down to shoot everybody in that room who was affiliated with the administration because they all had blood on their hands? How do we know? Maybe, just maybe, because Mr. Allen survived, maybe he will talk about this. Or maybe he won't. We don't know. But when it comes down to saying we don't like someone, we don't like their philosophy, what they believe in, what they do, and we can go out and kill them, we've reached a point in America that things aren't good. Because now we're becoming nations from the past, and those of you that don't research history, you're going to repeat it. Because you don't understand what happened in the past could very well occur now if you don't take some precautions and be careful about where you're going and what you're doing. So, Mr. Piker, yes, you may have freedom of speech, sir. That's your right in this country, and everybody does, including the likes of Jimmy Kimmel, by the way. Or maybe not Roseanne Barr. But regardless, when you start saying, let's go out and kill a president, and you do it at events that are hosted by the New York Times, folks, we're going in a wrong direction, and we're going there very fast. One person's opinion, just mine. But now, you know. Recently, I was perusing the pages of Rolling Stone magazine, one of my favorites, by the way, and I saw a headline that shocked me, but I knew exactly who they were talking about in the headline. It said the singer of the perfect country and western song had passed away at the age of 86, and I knew exactly who that was. That was David Allan Coe. David Allan Coe was one heck of a singer. I mean, he was different, born in 1939, like I said, passed away at 86. He was different. He was a songwriter, a singer, but he saw most of his life either in reform school or prison. And even his own son said it was difficult to get to his father. His father had a knack for singing and had a knack for writing songs. Wrote a song for Tanya Tucker called Would You Lay Down With Me? Well, you may have never heard of that one. I'll bet I do know one song you've heard of, Johnny Paycheck. Take This Job and Shove It. Now, those are two of his more famous songs from David Allan Coe, but probably his best song, the perfect country and western song written by him and Steve Goodman. It was, You Don't Have to Call Me Darlin', Darlin', because you never even call me by my name. Now, that song had a lot of iterations going on to it, a lot of different verses. David sang it, and he said, this ain't the perfect country and western song, because they don't talk about trucks and mama and railroad and getting drunk. So Steve Goodman wrote him another verse, sent it back to him, and now it became the perfect country and western song. But Steve Goodman is the person I want to talk about, because I saw Steve Goodman here in Fort Wayne back in 1978. He was the opening guy, the opening act for none other than Steve Martin. Back in 1978, Steve Martin had the Wild and Crazy Tour, and it actually stopped here in Fort Wayne. And because I was working in media at the time, I got front row seats. I was lucky back then, and went to the concert. Didn't know who this person was. This guy comes out, Steve Goodman, comes out in a cowboy hat and a guitar. I thought, who the heck is this clown? By the end of his 30-minute set, folks, he had the audience in his hand. The end of his act, he got a standing ovation. And even Steve Martin was talking about it. Who is this guy? Well, it turns out, a few years later, Steve Martin was on the Carson show. Johnny Carson? He was out there doing a fundraising for Steve Goodman because he was suffering from leukemia. Eventually died in 1984. He was a Chicago boy. And if you don't know who Steve Goodman is, how about Go Cubs Go, the song? How about the dying request of a Cubs fan being buried at Wrigley Field? That kind of stuff. That was Steve Goodman. Steve Goodman was the opening act for Steve Martin. Great act. I'll never forget it. But he also helped write the verse for David Allan Coe. You don't have to call me darling, darling. One of the classic country and western songs by one of the most, unique country and western singers. Hard times in his life, but you know what? Those songs, Take This Job and Shove It, and You Don't Have to Call Me Darling, Darling, will live on in music because of the man who sang them. The passing of songwriter and singer, country and western singer, David Allan Coe, passes at the age of 86. And now you know. Many old-time Hoosiers will remember the day when basketball was one class, and it was big-time sports, if you think about it. The movie Hoosiers was adapted from that concept, but alas and alack, the IHSAA said it's not fair. They created classes, and today we have multiple classes of basketball, football, and every other sport championship you could possibly imagine. Well, they're getting ready to do something down in Indianapolis that, you may not have seen coming, but if you have a son or daughter who's an athlete, plays in high school here in Indiana, you might want to pay attention. Because on May the 4th, the IHSAA is going to vote on something that, exists in some other states, but also exists in college. It's a version of NIL. Know that in college? Name, image, likeness? That's what the court said college players, they're basically employees for the university, and the university has to pay them. And now colleges have to pay their players. Now you take the porthole that they have, the transfer porthole, had that with money being in there, and players are going from school to school to school saying, who's going to pay me the most money? And that's what's going on, because many of these players figure, I'm not going to make it in the pros, so I'm going to make it into college. And colleges are paying millions of dollars a year for certain athletes. Every college is doing it, folks, so nobody's clean on this one. Everybody's doing it because, if you want athletes, you want to have a winning reputation in your school, you want to have a good win and loss records, you got to pay. Well, now guess what? The Indiana High School Athletic Association will be voting on a form of NIL for high school athletes. You heard me right. High school athletes will soon be able to make money off of their name. Now, if it's approved, it won't be a school running the program. It won't be the institution running the program. It'll be the child himself or the child's parents. The child's under the age of 18, obviously. But the parents could then market their child's name. If he or she is a star player, or they could have a special basketball, football, or baseball, or volleyball camp under their name, and they're being paid. It could be paid because of their name by companies. Can't be tied to their high school, can't be using a high school name, high school products, high school uniforms. But they will be able to sell their name, their likeness, and their image to whomever wants to buy it. Now, how many kids are going to do that? Well, probably not a lot, but there are stars. There are 4- and 5-star athletes in the state of Indiana, throughout the state, who could say, hey, I'm famous, I'm cool, I'm going to be great in college, and every college is recruiting me, And so I want to have my NIL for myself. I want to start making money now. And their parents could say, yes, we're going to have them do that. So they can negotiate deals with companies, with, well, agents, for lack of a better term, to sell their image, likeness, and their brand, because it's called personal branding activity, PBA. Now, get ready to hear that, folks, that term a whole lot more, because now your high school athlete will be subject to the PBA requirements, how he or she can market himself or herself and make money while they're in high school. Now, your parents out there saying, how dare they do that? My kid's just playing sports. They like to do that. He or she loves to do that. Well, there's another thing coming in that got to be careful of this word, and I hate to use it. It's called greed. And there are people out there saying, my kid can make money. My kid's a star athlete. I'm going to make some money off this thing. That's called greed. Will we see it? Well, the chances are you probably will. But May the 4th, they're voting down in Indianapolis. The IHSAA is now going to be able to have your son or daughter, if he or she chooses, to market their brand on a deal called personal branding activity. Their name, their likeness, their image, and they can sell that as a high schooler. That, folks, is the way things are going here in the state of Indiana. That's right. Or we used to have one class basketball, and now we have multiple class everything. Well, guess what? NIL is coming to your high school students here in Indiana once the IHSAA votes it in, and that will be happening on May the 4th. And now, you know. Well, it appears that Governor Mike Braun has had what old folks call a gestalt. Some of the young people say it's an aha moment. What is that moment? Well, Governor Braun has realized that folks in Indiana live within 50 miles of a pot dispensary, a pot shop, if you want to call it that. And he sees a lot of money flowing out of the state that, well, he'd rather see in the state so it could be taxed so the state gets more money. Pretty much the way things work in state government. So Governor Braun is saying, hey, you know, our legislature needs to get their head out of the sand. Because he said if you stick your head in the sand, you're generally going to make the wrong decision. All right, decisions are going to be made down at the State House, not this year, but possibly next year, about the possibility of, well, are you ready? Legalizing medical marijuana. Not recreational, folks. Right now, the governor said, let's legalize medical marijuana because so many people, so many disabled veterans and other folks like that who have problems that they don't want to take drugs. The drugs made by Indiana pharmaceutical companies, I should point out. But they're saying, why should we take a manufactured drug when Mother Nature put a plant on the planet that could heal our problems, or at least make our problems less of a problem? So that's where the whole argument is going. Should the state of Indiana legalize cannabis so we can have cannabis dispensaries throughout the state for medical purposes? So if the doctor says, well, here, you know, give you a script, buy yourself some wacky tobacco, and you can have that instead of taking a pill. It's going to be an interesting argument, and I'm sure a lot of people are saying, hey, they need to get that done. They should have done it years ago. And frankly, maybe. Because, well, that old ditchweed that you find here running around Indiana, if you look hard enough, well, that's not the same stuff that they have today. That stuff back in the old days, well, ain't worth hemp, frankly, when you think about it. But now the governor has a plan, and his plan is to bring it up to the legislature and say, here's what I have in mind. You need to do something and act now. Will the state of Indiana legalize marijuana, at least in a medical cannabis state? Nobody knows, really. But could it happen? Well, of course it could happen. But will it happen? Wishing and hoping, thinking and praying. That's really what's going on. So folks in Indiana, if you're waiting for the medical marijuana to show up, it just might happen in 2027. But then again, anything can happen in the state of Indiana. After all, can a team that played football that had the most losses in the history of any high or college game actually win the NCAA championship? Well, apparently they can, because it happened right here in Indiana. Just something to think about. legalizing medical marijuana in the state of Indiana. It's a possibility. At least that's what the governor wants. And now you know. Well, here we are into the primary election season, and one of the most important offices in the county of Allen, or the city of Fort Wayne, depending on how you look at it, is a county commissioner. Now, the county commissioners determine a lot of things about the growth of a community. Of course, you have your city council and those particular areas, but overall, the members of the county commission board, they're the ones who make a big determination about what happens in the city as far as our growth goes, where things should be, or should things be even erected in the first place. So I've had a chance to talk to some of those folks, and I ran across one lady who I was really surprised about because I had no idea who she was. I'd never heard of her. I didn't know her background. I didn't know her history. Frankly, I didn't know anything. So I decided to reach out with somebody who knew her and said, hey, I'd like to talk to her one-on-one, have a discussion. Her name is Ewelina Connolly, and she is she's an import to Fort Wayne. She's not native born, she's from Poland. Well, she came to Fort Wayne in the late 1990s, I believe it was, and she became involved in the city. Turns out she was a dancer, which I didn't know, and ultimately got involved with organizations. She's certified family, marriage, and those kind of things. She'll explain all those things to you, but she decided to run for, well, believe it or not, to be on the county commissioners. And frankly, that's a tough job. And there's some big issues coming up for the county commissioners. One is a potential casino we may or may not see. And the other one is a quarry that, well, may or may not be built. This depends on whose side you're on. But here is my discussion with Ewelina Connolly. And the biggest thing I asked is about her background. Where'd she come from? And frankly, how'd she get here and why? Now take a listen to what she had to say.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question. But first, let me tell you why you perhaps not have never heard my name in political circles before, because I don't come from politics. I do come from 30 years of serving the people of Allen County in various roles. What has brought me to Fort Wayne, in a way, I came here few years before I had the opportunity to come and stay, and that was through the sister city relationship that Fort Wayne has with my hometown, which is Płock, Poland. I don't know if you're familiar with the sister city relationships that Fort Wayne has.
I knew we had one with a city in Japan. I knew
Yep.
that, but I did not know we had one in Poland.
Yes, we do. There's one from Japan, which is Takoka, Japan, and Gera, Germany. And so Płock is also a sister city to Fort Wayne. And so that was initially that opportunity for me to come here and learn more about the community. Um, Really, my story is your American dream story. I grew up in a communist socialist Poland, and I was really able to find this opportunity and pursue freedom and opportunity here in the United States. Because even after the communist was over in my home country, you know, there came time of very painful transition and change and growth. That really did not allow for a lot of opportunity to young people. So I am very grateful that I've landed in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I've been here the whole entire time. It's been amazing watching this community grow and change over the past 30 years.
When you
Truly
came here
incredible.
from Poland, did you come by yourself, or did you have other family members that came with you? How did that all happen?
Yes, I came here by myself. I came here um, initially when I was coming here. I was part of a dance group. We
Ah,
used to come and perform here in Fort Wayne.
okay, you were a dancer.
I used to be a dancer, yes.
What type of dance? Ballet and that kind of stuff, or what was it that you were?
It was Polish folklore.
Okay, all right.
Yep. And quite frankly, many people in Fort Wayne might still be very familiar with the group from Płock, because this group used to come to Fort Wayne on pretty regular basis, specifically for Three Rivers Festival. And it would perform at places like Honeywell Center in Wabash and the Follner Theater here in Fort Wayne. So perhaps some of our viewers, um, perhaps they've actually attended a concert or two
Well,
in the
I,
past.
I tell you what, that gave me some background I didn't know. So here you are, you're somebody in a dance troupe. You come from Poland. What on earth prompted you then to say, I think I'm going to get involved with politics, and especially as ugly as politics is in America. Let's be honest, it's nasty.
I agree, Pat. This is about the worst time to get involved in politics. But I think that's what makes it the most important time. And as I've mentioned to you, because of my background growing up in communist socialist Poland, I've seen really firsthand the impact of these socialist ideas and socialist regime that it has on people, and how soul crushing it is if it comes to human ambition. And so, I've spent my professional career here in Fort Wayne working with individuals and families, and really working towards the betterment of this community. And in the past few years, I really have noticed that as I am living my American dream, and as I am working with other people to help them realize their American dream, even as American born, um, I've noticed that these socialist ideas and ideologies started to make a comeback. And, we know what's happening in New York right now.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, we do. Oh, yes, we do.
we do. Perhaps, I don't know if you do know, but we now have a Socialist Democratic Party here in Fort Wayne. So somehow we have not learned the lesson that we're supposed to learn from history, and we are seeing this resurfacing of fascination with socialist ideologies. And so, from my standpoint, I raised my children here, now grandchildren, and I'll be darned if I'm going to wake up in United States of America to the same reality that I had the opportunity to escape from. So that's very motivating
So
to
did
me.
you become naturalized here in the United States to become a citizen then? Is that what you did?
Yeah, so my first 15 years in the United States, I was a green card holder. And, at that point, I made a decision to become a naturalized citizen, which was a big decision for me because I grew up in a different country. And, even being here for 15 years, I would find myself still asking myself a question of really, who am I and where do I belong? And so I've made a decision to pursue citizenship, to pledge allegiance to this country, and to pursue more decisively civic involvement in our community. So from that point forward, I've gotten involved with civic development opportunities, such as Mitch Daniels' leadership program, where I applied and I was accepted as the only person from Allen County. And from there, I've applied to take part of the Lugar series, a very prestigious program designed specifically for Republican women who are seeking to either run for office or be appointed. And so that has been an amazing experience. I've also have gotten involved with the policy circle here locally, which has been truly an amazing opportunity. And opportunity to make connection with another like-minded women in our community. So my civic growth has been gradual. I wanted to make sure that I am well prepared and well and surrounded with the right people before stepping my foot and throwing my hat in a ring, so to speak, running for public office.
Well,
It's
now
been
here's the deal. You pick the county commissioner's office, and if you're going to pick a big office, boy, when you started big. I'll give you that, because most people think about county council or some of the lower positioned elected offices. But when you went big, you went big. So what prompted you to say, "Hey, I want to be a county commissioner"?
Yes, I am. I am a visionary, and I am a seasoned executive. So I feel that, on the one hand, my work with people, boots on the ground, something that I have not shared with you yet. My professional career in Fort Wayne started as when I was serving as a therapist. I am licensed marriage family therapist and licensed clinical addictions counselor. So these were really my first steps professionally in this community. Um, Literally going into people's homes, working with them, um, making sure that we are working again towards better outcomes for these individuals, families, and our community. And that led me to take roles, various administrative roles, and at this point of my career, I have years of executive leadership experience behind my belt. And so yes, on the one hand, knowing the community well, having had the opportunity to work in every corner of the community, because as a nonprofit leader, you truly you get involved. You serve on boards, committees, task forces. You're solving problems and navigating opportunities that go beyond the mission of your organization, that really serve the community at large. And on the other hand, having the executive experience and understanding what it takes to be a leader on that level. Um, all of that to say, the commissioner role has really been the role that I've had most interest in, and obviously, I was needing to wait for the right opportunity to come along.
The commissioner's job is to control a lot of stuff, what happens in the city, the growth of the city, the things that are happening. And there's a couple of big projects, a couple of big issues we have to talk about and get your opinion on it so people can understand where you stand. The biggest issue that they're talking about, and it's been going on for gosh knows how long, is a casino. And this goes clear back to 2009 when Tom Henry first tried to get a casino in, and people went, nah, we don't want one of those things. And there was discussion about getting it recently in New Haven, and a group that resort out of southern Indiana came up, oh, we're going to spend $500 million in New Haven, building a fabulous facility in New Haven. Didn't go anywhere. Ultimately, the state government says, okay, we're going to set it up, and that way the commissioners can make a decision. And then ultimately along the line, this is the way things turned out. It ended up being, no, we're going to have a referendum. And right now, that is what is scheduled to happen. But once a referendum goes, then the county commissioners are going to have to say yes or no whether we want this or not. All of this leads up to, where do you stand on a casino in Allen County?
Yes, so you may know the timeline of this conversation playing out. So when I first announced my candidacy, we're at a very different place in terms of the casino conversation, and it kind of has developed over the past few months. And from the very beginning, knowing that perhaps I will not be ultimately the person making the decision on the casino, because this decision will be made yet this year. And if elected, I will not step into my role until next year. But from the very beginning, I was advocating for the referendum very, very strongly. And one of the reasons why I thought that referendum is the way to go about it is because we now seem to have a pattern of big projects that come our way where people don't feel included in a decision making, where people feel like decisions are made behind closed doors, and they are kind of informed of what the result of those decisions are. I am a leader of people. I am running because I want to put people first. So naturally, I was very strongly advocating for the referendum, and I was glad, to follow that bill and the process, and to see that the referendum finally made its way into the final bill. So, with that said, yes, the referendum will be on the ballot in November, and I will absolutely align with the majority vote.
All right, that's issue number one. Issue number
We
two.
have a lot of issues,
Oh, no,
don't we?
no, I want to go to two big issues because these are things people are talking about. And these are, you're probably going to be pressed on by the media and everybody else. Issue number two is the potential for a new quarry for building products and what have you on the southwest side of Fort Wayne, over near the new DuPont IU hospital, and all the new expansion happening in the southwest side, and it's turned into a real a dogfight, if you will, over having that quarry built. And now there's a big meeting of the Coliseum scheduled for May 26th, I believe it is, and it's so big they're going to have it at the Coliseum. Heaven knows how that's going to turn out. But as a potential commissioner, I'm not sure if it's going to ever come up, but you're going to have to vote on it. How do you feel about a quarry being put in southwest side of Fort Wayne, near the schools, near the hospital, and near everything else in the city?
Yes, again, very disappointing that we hear about these projects while they're already in motion, right? Instead of um, maybe having conversation proactively. Um, if there's a need for a quarry because we need the resource, that's the conversation that needs to happen in this community. Now, the current location proposed for the quarry is not the right location for this project. And I was, I believe, the very first candidate who made an official statement against the quarry in the proposed location. I want to be very clear, I am pro-development. I don't believe that this quarry at the proposed location is compatible with the residential development that we have there, with the school systems, with the healthcare that's there. And so that is why I am standing against it, and supporting the voices of people on the southwest side, which also falls under the district that I would represent as a commissioner of District 3. I want to make sure that these voices are heard and amplified, and that I am an active ally in conversation with residents living in that area, but really residents of Allen County at large, so that we can understand that this is not the kind of project that is welcome in that space.
So there it is. Ewelina Connolly, Polish immigrant, been here roughly 30 years, married, has kids and grandkids, and she's turning the big 5-0, and she wants to be a county commissioner. Will she? Well, we'll find out on Tuesday when they have the primary. Regardless of how it turns out, we now know there are people that really care about this city, care about what happens, care about our growth. And it looks to me like Ewelina Connolly is one of those people who may very well be the next commissioner of the Board of Commissioners of Allen County. Time will tell, and elections will be deciders. And now, you know.